Okay, next. Now, okay, the next level of muktzah, after muktzah machmas chsarin, means keli shemalachte le'isr, like we discussed at great length, something whose primary use is for something forbidden. If you want to use it on Shabbos, it's muktzah, unless if you need the place that it's on, or you want to use something permissible. Like we said, a hammer is made to build, to the construction, it's muktzah. You want to use it to crack open a nut or a coconut, then you'll be allowed to. So over there, it's not real muktzah, because therefore you can move it for something permissible, to do something permissible, or you need the place. The next classification of muktzah is something which is completely muktzah. That means you can't move it for any reason whatsoever. And that category of muktzah is called muktzah machmas chsarin kis. It's muktzah because of a loss of money. Concerned with the loss of monetary money, which means like this. The general guidelines before we get into details. It's not even a question of expensive. Something that's primarily used for something forbidden. And you're not going to use it for anything else but what it's made to do, which is which is forbidden on Shabbos. For instance, you have a very expensive violin, okay? So if you have, let's say, these cheap flutes, that the kids play with, they're called recorders, this thing, $1 they cost $1, whatever. That's keli shemalachte le'isr, because the flute is made to play instrument, music, which is not allowed on Shabbos. But if you want to use the flute to hit somebody with, or to read something, or as a bookmark, you'd be allowed to use it. But an expensive violin, nobody is going to use for anything else but playing music of a violin, because it's too expensive to use as a bookmark, or to hit somebody with, or things like that. So therefore, a violin is what's called muktzah machmas chsarin kis. It's completely muktzah. You cannot move it for any reason whatsoever. Now we'll give a lot of different examples. Something which is normally kept, I'm just general rules before we get into the exact examples. Something that's kept in a special place, and you normally don't move it around. Why don't you move it around? Because you don't want to ruin it. I'll give you an example. A very expensive piece of art. You have it hanging on the wall. Okay? It's an expensive piece of art. You don't move it around. Why? Because it's too precious, too expensive to just move around. So you put it up and you leave it there. Therefore, that piece of art is completely muktzah on Shabbos, because it's machmas chsarin kis. So therefore, it would be, you want to show the picture to somebody on Shabbos, you're really not allowed to show the picture on Shabbos, because you're not going to use it for anything else but a picture that's hung in the wall, which is also forbidden. 1 second, we'll get into that in a second. What?
Let's say somebody put a nail on the wall before Shabbos, if you hang a picture on Shabbos.
If somebody put a nail in the wall before Shabbos and the picture was already there before Shabbos, you could rehang it. Then you could rehang it. Okay. Now, another thing, which is a very practical... 1 second. You bought... 1 second. It doesn't apply to food. What happens, a woman or a man bought clothing. Okay, they got, and everybody buys online today. So you got something in the mail, and you tried it on, and it doesn't fit. So you're going to give it back. Correct? You're going to give it back. Obviously, it's no good. You're not going to use that suit for anything else, because if you ruin it, you're not going to be able to give it back, unless it's Costco. But normally, you can't. If you take something and you ruin it, the store won't take it back. So therefore, even though it's a piece of clothing, and generally speaking, clothing is not muktzah, but anything that you want to return to the owner, you're not going to use for anything else, because it's too. It's not it's not $1,000 piece. It could be $10 piece of clothing, whatever. But you want to return it back to the owner, so you're not going to use this for anything else. Why? Because you're going to lose money by it. That's also completely muktzah. So we're going to learn the various different examples. Okay, so we already discussed a doctor's scalpel, or a moil's knife, a sheikh's knife. Okay? All these things are very expensive. Nobody's going to use it. We said nobody's going to take a moil's knife and cut a piece of cake with it. Or take a sheikh's knife and cut a piece of cake with it, or cut a piece of cheese with it. Why? Because you're going to ruin it. What? What?
Got cheese.
You want to know if it's duchket and sakina, if you... I'm not talking about kashrus now. I'm talking about the fact you're not going to use it to cut a piece of parva cheese. Okay? Well, I mean, what's the difference? You're not going to use it to cut a piece of meat. You're not going to use it to cut a piece of cake. Right? Because the sheikh's knife is too delicate. In addition to that, the purpose of a sheikh's knife is to do shchita, which is forbidden on Shabbos. Right? So then, that's completely muktzah. You can't move it for any reason. Which means if somebody left their sheikh's knife on the dining room table, they came home late, whatever, they dumped it at the table right before Shabbos, and you need the place, you're not allowed to pick up the knife. If it would be a regular keli shemalachte le'isr, then you would be allowed to pick it up and move it to where you need, because you need the place. What? What? You could cover with a plate, which is not so simple, but you can cover with the plate, but you can't take it off the table. What?
What about the psychological effects of having such an important, expensive item where it's exposed, and you have no peace of Shabbos until you put it through?
What happens if somebody psychologically has to drive in a car on Shabbos because they need to go to the beach, because psychologically they need fresh air? One second. Is that going to allow you to drive in a car?
No, it's not, but we're not actually Shabbos. Shabbos, it's not there.
Why can't you compare it? If it's forbidden to move, one second. If something is forbidden to move, halachically, psychological welfare is not going to really matter. So it bothers me psychologically. Next time be more careful. Never put it on the table before Shabbos. Somebody had, by mistake, turned off the light. And now psychologically, they're very upset because they're having guests and it's going to be very dark and there's no candles to make it romantic and there's going to be a very dark room, which therefore they can turn on the light. Or as they say in yeshiva, open the light. What's sakana? One second. We learned already by muktzah, anything which is sakana with danger, even if it's completely muktzah, you're allowed to move it. But a sheikh's knife on the table is not a sakana. You break a bottle on the floor, a broken bottle is muktzah technically, but you're allowed to clean it up because somebody can, God forbid, hurt themselves on the glass.
The dark room.
What a dark room?
You say if it's locked in a room, you're allowed to break open the door because of...
Yeah, but that's because a kid in the dark room locked up. It's not, by the way, not even a dark room.
No, regular.
Even a light room.
Regular.
Because that's sakana for a child. So pikuach nefesh. But what pikuach nefesh is there having a knife on the table?
No, I'm talking about a dark room.
Dark room to do what? Turn on the light?
The kid is in a dark room.
So let him go out of the dark room.
Obviously, but he can't. So in that case,
Why can't he? He's locked in the room. Then you can break the door.
But the oil makes a meal on Shabbos, so obviously he's using the knife, it's muktzeh. Is there a difference in din then?
Is there a difference?
The oil,
Yeah, right.
on Shabbos, could they remove it away from you again?
He's allowed to put it down. He can't move it right later.
He's allowed to put it down, has to stay until after Shabbos?
Probably.
Didn't become, we can't do it.
What? What did he become? He's not going to use that same knife, even if he washes off the knife well. He's not going to use it unless it's disposable. Now the Me'elim use disposable knives. Okay, but let's say it's not disposable. Yeah, is the male going to take that knife after he does a bris and cut a piece of cake with it? If it's not disposable. No, he's not. Okay, so kiss.
so you say with the recorder, you can use it to pick something up from the
The kid's flute that costs $1.
Right.
No.
But it's not usually used for that at all.
Doesn't matter.
A phone, I understand. A
No.
phone could also be used as a placeholder, for a temporary placeholder, put it on top of paper.
So the poskim write, in fact, this is the book of Muktzeh, he writes that Moshe Feinstein told him, don't classify the definition of muktzah, machmas, and kiss, because technology changes. So one day, you can have a phone that you don't care about, it's a cheap phone, and therefore it's not muktzah, machmas, and kiss. One day, it might become muktzah, machmas, and kiss. It might be one day one muktzah, machmas, and kiss, and then a year later it won't be muktzah, machmas, and kiss. No, as I'm saying, it's not. He says to you, don't categorize it clearly because it depends on who, what, when, where. It's hard to know. Sometimes it would be considered sudden kiss. Sometimes it won't. A what? Yeah. Yeah. What happens if there's no Erev and he didn't bring his knife? That's a machlikas in the Mishnah. The machshire mitzvah. Can have a guy take it. In fact, there's a very interesting shaila in halacha. The Alter Rebbe brings on two opinions. Are you allowed to carry a baby, let's say a baby for a bris? A baby's home, and you want to make a bris in shul, because there's more room, whatever. Is a guy allowed to, there's no erev, let's say, right? Is a guy allowed to carry the kid from the home to the bris in shul? There's two opinions in halacha.
Yes.
One, you're a Kohen, but not a rabbi yet. Thank God. So the shaila is, so there's the two opinions in halacha. The Alter Rebbe implies you should be machmas not to do it, because he says make the bris at home. What do you need to? Some people say it's shvus b'malkim mitzvah, but it's not. The Alter Rebbe says not a mitzvah to do in shul. You can do it at home. But a moil, if he didn't bring a knife and there's no way, if it's like a big shadow, what to do? Can you have a guy bring it? Say mitzvah, shvus, the shvus. It just changes. It's still, if it's also, it's still also with Rabbonim. But in that case, you can have a guy bring a knife, not through Rosh Hashanah, because then it's only shvus to shvus, and baka mitzvah would be allowed. Because you can't say, here you could say, do the bris at home, don't carry the kid. But you can't do a bris without a knife. Understand? So then you'd be allowed to ask a guy to bring the knife. Okay, next. No, it's not. If a Jew is bringing the knife for the moil, it's not muktzah, because now this is being used for a mitzvah. So then, after the bris, it would be muktzah. But before the bris, you're bringing it for the moil, even though the moil, it doesn't matter.
You're using it.
Yeah, he's using it for a mitzvah, so then it's not muktzah for anybody.
Is that why you use disposable ones?
No, they use disposable ones because it's cheaper and better, I think. Cheaper and better. It's healthier also, you don't have to sanitize it and just whatever. Okay, the same thing applies to cameras, the stereos, all these recording things, tools of the trade. Yeah, a guy who has a very expensive tools. Yeah,
Like a lawnmower.
he's not going to use it for anything else but what the tool of the trade is. So again, that would be. I'll give you an example. They give an example. Jewelers have special screwdrivers. It's very delicate, and they're not going to use it for anything. They're not going to use it to screw into the wall. It's too delicate for them. It's very unique. So again, it's not even a question of the price. It's a question, you're not going to use it for anything but what it's made to use for, which is forbidden on Shabbos. So then you wouldn't be allowed to do that screwdriver. Such things. According to many opinions, by the way, important papers, like he brings down canceled checks, that's all of a shalom anyway. Sales receipts, driver's licenses, car registrations, poskim, right? That's muktzah, machmas, and kiss. If you have a car registration, you're not going to make a paper airplane out of it and throw it to somebody.
Even if it's digitalized, everything's digitalized?
Huh? No, we're talking about the paper itself that you want. It's an important paper. You keep the paper.
Yeah, but if everything is digitalized.
doesn't matter for you. This is an important paper. You're not going to throw it around.
But I know if I lose it, I have something else.
It's not the point. You're not going to just let it hang around somewhere. You're going to put it away.
If there is no muktzeh, there is no
Erev.
and you know that they don't check your ID and you're going to the synagogue. Can you carry your ID?
No. If there's no Erev, no.
So what do you do? Like, the main
What do? You stay home. You don't desecrate Shabbos to go daven in a shul. If there's no Erev and you're carrying, it's forbidden.
How about if you take a picture of your ID and it's not valuable?
You're still carrying. It doesn't matter. For you, it's valuable. You need to show it at the door. In fact, discussing, I know there's a lot of rabbis that allow it, but you know those wands that they use in a lot of shuls to check people before Shabbos, on Shabbos? I know the modern Orthodox poskim are all matter it. It's not so simple in halacha that you just matter the wands, because even though a guy is doing it, but you're helping him, you're putting out your hand, you're standing there.